Welcome to StartupJab.
Welcome to StartupJab. I'm T. Hopkins, here with my co-host Jason Nellis.
Are we talking over each other? Is that what's happening again?
I think that's what we're doing.
Damn it!
We do that every time.
Do it! We do this every time. Gosh,
it's good. That's our shtick now. We just don't plan anything. It's wonderful.
Podcast listeners are like, "What the hell did I subscribe to these idiots?" Well, thank you all for joining. As we said before, that's T. Hopkins. I'm Jason Nellis, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys with us here today on StartupJab, episode 11, Bossy, or the Boss. We have with us today two extraordinary women from The Good Lemon, who I'm going to let introduce themselves. I threw their link in the chat for those of you who are watching us right now, and we'll make sure that gets in the description later. But if Megan or Katie, if you guys want to introduce yourselves, please, by all means.
Sure, I'll start. I'm Katie Stanton. I'm a DC native, and I'm a co-founder of The Good Lemon. We're a digital marketing communications firm based here in DC, and I'm about to embark on the remote work life experience and move to Belgium in 2 weeks. So super pumped about that one.
Awesome.
I'm Megan Barrett. I'm also a DC native, and I've been working with social enterprises and organizations doing good for most of my career, and I'm so excited to be launching this new business with Katie.
Very cool. Are you guys, so a little bit of history and context for our audience. How do you guys know each other, and how did this get started?
Sure. So we are actually former coworkers at a startup that's actually shut down, and we decided, we were thinking, what are we going to do next? I have this big life change coming up. How are we going to fix this? And I walked up to Megan one day and I said, hey, want to start a business with me? And luckily Megan said yes. And then we started it. And now we're figuring out how to do the rest.
Awesome. Talk a little bit, Megan, about the transition from working for another company to working for yourself. I mean, I think particularly as we were talking about, last week before the show, it's a little different, I imagine, than say me or Teague starting a company. Because we're dudes. Sorry, I should be specific about that.
I was waiting for it.
Can I just say, you all gave me the perfect pause. Thank you.
It's good.
Well, I like to think that a lot of things aren't super different for men and women, but there have definitely been some things that we've noticed. Mm-hmm. I'll start with the inspiration for the title of this chat we're doing right now. So the other day I was talking to Katie and I was like, people have never called me Bossy until I started this business. And now I have friends calling me Bossy. I have all sorts of, people I'm working with, professional contacts, and like, oh, so you're Bossy now, huh? And I'm like, well, I'm the boss. Is that what you mean? So that has been really interesting for me. Katie convinced me that it's a good thing to be bossy, and that I'm going to now embrace it. But it was not my first instinct to consider being called bossy a positive characteristic. And I also just didn't expect it. I haven't really been called that before and didn't really expect that to be the characteristic that came to mind when I told people that I was starting a business. So
yeah, there's a lot of gendered language that gets used to describe men and women differently in leadership roles. And I think, women often get called bossy or abrasive when men get called, leaders and assertive. And it's totally sexist and totally crappy.
Right. And this,
yep.
This is a major reason why giving a woman entrepreneur or a woman business owner the advice to just act like a dude in order to get ahead, or in order to, get higher pay, attain more leadership roles, that kind of thing. It doesn't make any sense, because a lot of the characteristics are behaviors that a man will have in a business world. If a woman takes those on, she's treated completely differently when she acts like that. And you see that a lot in politics right now. You see that a lot when you're just sitting around the meeting table. And, if I stand up and I interrupt you and talk over you, it's going to be a much different reception because of these gender expectations and, the way that women are supposed to stay quiet and make sure everybody gets along and make sure everybody feels great about themselves. And the feedback that if a woman is yelling at me, I feel like my mom is yelling at me and, that kind of thing. A lot of little behaviors can add up to women feeling dismissed and like they can't take charge. And that's a terrible feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, particularly in the, particularly in a modern age when we're supposed to be, it's supposed to be a meritocracy. It's supposed to be that every person, regardless of gender or race or background, is capable of supposedly capable of building their own foundation and being able to scale from there. Have you found it? I guess my question in that regard then is, as you've been getting started and as things have been starting to really, sort of set for you, are you finding that there are a lot of resources available to women entrepreneurs that are specific, or it's just sort of first come, first serve for anybody of any gender, and that it's easier or harder as a woman? I mean, is the experience in general that particularly here in DC as an example, that there are resources that are helping to balance out that inherent disconnect, I guess?
I mean, there are a number of different resources available. I think there's a lack of people necessarily explicitly looking for them, and specifically the people in charge who probably need to read them the most. Or access them the most.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking about a bunch of different things. There's resources that are specifically for women business owners that give them access to opportunities and capital. Sure. There's lots of organizations. There's wonderful nonprofits and companies that are working with women business owners to help them, to help more women business owners just exist and to take that leap into starting your own business and launching your career in this way. Sure. There's lots of advocacy organizations and nonprofits that are working to dispel these stereotypes and, actively work against these things like language. And, there's lots of them. I just don't think enough of the people who need to see those organizations and work with them and speak to them are doing so. And it's something I would definitely like to see more of, because if you Google it, it's there.
Right. And of course, the people who most need to read it are the ones who are not seeing it. And the people who are seeing it are the ones who probably are already paying attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what steps can say, for example, what steps could Jason and I take to be better allies and to be, to help bridge that gap between the people who need to read it and the people who are reading it?
Well, I think this is an important first step. I think as you build the show, really think about who you're inviting to speak and who's coming around your table to share. Listening is a big one. Empathizing is a big one. Googling, reading is a big one. And just making sure that you're actively taking part in these discussions. I don't think you necessarily have to take them over, or, there's a lot of power dynamics that can come into play when you almost try too hard, but that's why you want to listen first and, respect people's platforms where they are, because a lot of the leaders who are in these fields and who are talking about women in business are talking very loudly. They just need more people to listen and share. So tap into your own networks and help share, that access and those eyeballs and those ears. I think this is a really good start, but there's of course lots of different networks and groups and places where we can, amplify these voices a little more. And then a second thing I think is to start these discussions in places where you wouldn't expect to have them, something that I think enough people don't do, especially people who want to be allies, really step in when they hear those little things like that gendered language, or those little jokes, or those little moments that, make the steam come out of my ears, but maybe not everyone in the room noticed that it happened. Right. And if you notice it and if you see it, speaking up is a really important thing. Someone who does this really well is Jean-Luc Picard. I don't know if you're familiar.
Why, I was just watching season 3 of TNG yesterday. Why?
So
I really was, and I'm not ashamed of that, not even a little.
So he actually experienced domestic violence when he was growing up, and his mother went through it.
Right. You mean Patrick Stewart? Yeah.
Yes, I do mean Patrick Stewart. Yeah. I assumed that was a given.
You got to be explicit sometimes. I'm not a bright guy.
Well, he's explicitly said that I have this platform as a white man. People tend to listen to me, so I might as well talk about these issues and make sure that people are listening to the right things. And I think that that's a really nice example of somebody who's standing up as an ally and really putting himself out there, for better or worse, right? I mean, you get all kinds of feedback from doing that kind of thing, but if you really care about being an ally and supporting everyone around you, you have to be willing.
No, absolutely. Megan, I'd love to transfer over to you for just a second, because as we mentioned earlier, I'm going to shift gears for half a second. So we talked earlier about Katie is about to embark upon an adventure. So,
Yes.
So for those who are just joining, Katie is going to be leaving the country pretty soon and going to Europe, which is pretty cool. Don't get me wrong.
It's pretty sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's not just like, this isn't like a 2-week trip where we're trying to figure out like how to balance things. Like, you're straight up moving, Katie, which is awesome. Megan, before we hear Katie's perspective on it, because I think I kind of want to hear yours first. How you feeling?
Okay.
How are things looking?
I'm feeling good. So I think weirdly it helps that Katie's moving to a place where I have also lived,
Nice.
because I just, she's moved to Brussels. I studied abroad there during college. But even though right now we're in the same place, we actually don't work together most days. She's out in middle of nowhere, Virginia.
Alexandria.
True. So
For our non-DC listeners, these are all within a stone's throw of each other. Just
Yeah, it's literally just right across the river.
So in terms of like, we already have a lot of ways that we work together remotely. So in terms of just like operations, I think we're set up pretty well. Also, this kind of goes to like working in a partnership anyway, but it really is kind of like being married. Mm-hmm. And we have really open conversations with each other all the time. And I think building that foundation between the two of us hopefully makes Katie feel comfortable, makes me feel comfortable with her moving, because we've been able to set up a partnership, work out how our business is going to be run, work out what happens if one of us dies or one of us decides to leave or whatever it is.
Nobody died.
Let's not have any.
That no one's going to die. We're fine.
Yeah.
But just having those really open conversations and being really supportive of each other is one of the reasons that we wanted to be in a partnership anyway. And I think those are things that are going to really help us when Katie's across the Atlantic. Not to mention,
wow.
I'm already putting in the pipeline for some summer months in Brussels, hoping that I can kick it there with her for a little while.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Before I forget, if you're in the audience, as I just texted a moment ago, if you guys have any questions for Megan and Katie, feel free to ask them in the chat. As there are 4 of us here in the space, obviously we cannot allow extra people to join this time, unfortunately. But ask your questions in chat. We'll make sure to get to them. We'd love to hear your thoughts and commentary.
And the /Q tag so that they show up in our questions panel.
Katie, how are you feeling about all this?
Great. No, it's definitely an interesting time because we're at a really key point building this business. We're actually in a really weird deadline month. So we have a lot of different client deliverables that are due right now. I'm moving in 2 weeks, so I'm doing all the last minute prep and on top of everything else. And this is not like a problem necessarily, but I think it's finally hitting people around me, like friends and family, that, oh, you're actually leaving. So I have everyone that I know calling me for drinks and time and get-togethers and stuff. And that is definitely something I'm learning about as an entrepreneur is how do I balance my time? How do I remember to have a life? How do I remember to enjoy that time when I feel like I should be doing something more productive, ostensibly productive? How do I make my mom feel okay with the fact that I'm leaving for 2 years, all of those different things. And my boyfriend's actually already in Brussels working. And so, if you're watching, honey, hi. And, that's another thing is balancing that relationship and making sure that everybody feels taken care of. And like, I'm giving enough of my attention to everybody who needs it, as well as myself and as well as my business. So it's a little bit rough at the moment. Oh, and I don't speak French. So that's super fun.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah.
So hopefully once I get there, I have no more excuses left and I can know more than bonjour, bonsoir.
There you go.
Just listen to those tapes on the plane over. You'll be
That's
fine.
Right. Just cram a Berlitz class between now and then. It's no big deal.
Exactly.
What's one more thing?
Exactly. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Teague. Sorry.
So I was going to transition a little bit, and I wanted to say one of the things that that I'm a little sometimes uncomfortable with is that we often talk to male entrepreneurs about what they're doing and women entrepreneurs about being women entrepreneurs. And I want to make sure that we don't fall into that trap here. So I'd love to sort of transition into talking to you guys about actually your business, which we haven't described what you're doing. And so I'd love to give you guys a chance to give your pitch and tell folks what your business is about. And let's start talking about the kind of stuff, the kind of things you're working on.
Thank you.
I was actually quite literally about to ask that exact same question.
I figured that we could have just asked at the same time, but we're trying to
super confusing. But please tell us. Yeah.
So we are a digital marketing communications firm that works with startups, nonprofits, social enterprises, small businesses that are trying to connect with their audience in the digital world. And are trying to either bring some testing into their world, trying to figure out what new programs and projects to offer their customers. So with that, we bring in some of the lean startup consulting to help them figure out how to do that well.
But
Kiki's rolling her eyes.
Yeah. You have to understand, one of the common threads of our weekly chats here is that at some point Teague or me will mention the fact that we are startup, that we're lean startup aficionados.
Oh yeah.
And it's just now at this point digitally we feel Kiki, who's in the audience, just roll her eyes into the back of her head like, oh, these idiots every time.
Yeah, I heard the words come out and I was like, oh.
I would point out it wasn't us this time. We didn't bring it up.
That's true.
But you were saying.
So we're working with these organizations and really just trying to help them either figure out how to have better practices within their offices and bring a little bit more expertise and training to them and their staff, or take on those responsibilities as consultants outside of the business.
Yeah, and a major reason that we're angling our business that way, or a lot of the things that we think about when we approach clients and think about how we deliver our services, is that we were both in the nonprofit world for several years. We both worked with several kinds of consultants. We went through all the kinds of experiences that we never want to give clients. We want to be the consultants we've always wanted to work with, and especially in the nonprofit world, which is a majority of our clients right now, since that's our networks, right? You don't really have the money or the time to make mistakes. You can't really just write off a few $1,000s to say, oh, that was a poor experience and, that didn't really work out for me. We want to deliver something better. So a lot of how we approach things is making people feel like they're getting exactly what they're looking for, like they're getting quality work, like for a fair price, and that they can rely on us and come back to us with what they need, even when that's a little bit outside of the explicit what's written in the contract. Which leads me to another interesting thing about being a women entrepreneur is the number of people who have spoken to me about how much we charge and the impressions that we give based on our rates, and how we are taken seriously based on what we charge people, because so many of the women business owners or consultants that I know undercharge and are very aware that they undercharge, but are not necessarily sure how to make sure that they're charging enough. So it's this constant conversation, and it's it's not just women who deal with this, but it's the constant feeling of, well, if I charge too much, nobody's going to accept that from me because they don't think I'm worth it. But if I charge too little, no one's going to take me seriously. So how do I find this happy medium? And it's definitely something that I struggle with, is, naming that rate and making sure that it's fair for everyone, but also fair for me and for Megan. So.
So do you guys have any advice on setting rates for folks who are listening? I know that's something that a lot of people are interested in.
Advice. Well, it really helps to know the budget that your client is looking at. So that's the first step, is trying to get them to say anything about what their budget is like, and go from there. Because, you want them to say the number first, right? And then you can work with it. I think another thing that we've been working on is trying to get to that point where like 50, you're pricing things right when 50% of people are taking your price and 50% of people are saying it's too expensive. And so we're trying to get comfortable saying like, no, we need to charge you more than you can afford, or you have billed for this, and this is why it will cost more, and this is why it will be better for you to do this. But ultimately we have, lost some contracts because we're pricing higher than clients are interested in paying. And there are great people out there that I'm sure are charging less for things than we are. But yes, I think the third thing is just like for us to feel comfortable with the numbers we're putting down on paper.
Sure.
And that's,
well, and any responsible business owner would know that you have to charge at the very bare minimum appropriately such that your time is valuable enough. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to increase your margins as high as possible, but you can't undercut yourself because that defeats the point of capitalism. So,
And it would surprise you how few people have actually brought that up in this conversation with me when it comes to talking about pricing. They don't necessarily talk to me about it from a business perspective. They talk about it from an emotional perspective and from, how I will be perceived.
Really?
Yeah.
So what kind of things are you hearing?
A lot of what I've heard is from other women business owners who talk a lot about being taken seriously and talk about being respected for your work based on how much you charge. So it's both personal, perceptions about me as a potential consultant. It's also perceptions about the business that I'm running and, what level that we're at or what kind of things that we can provide or what kind of, a lot of it just comes from, you're charging so little. Well, isn't that cute? You have a little business,
Wow, that's really condescending.
Yeah.
And then some of the other advice as well that we've gotten that I've heard from a couple of places is, take whatever number that you're dreaming of and just like blow it up a lot more and just see what happens. And that sounds great in theory. That sounds wonderful in theory. That doesn't necessarily feel as good when you're trying to get this business off the ground. And quite frankly, I need to land contracts. I need to get clients. I need to make this happen. And if I come out the gate saying I'm worth this much and everybody needs to pay it and nobody does, that doesn't put me in a great position either. So, we've really come at it from more of a perspective of getting to know the client really well firsthand, being able to form a trusting relationship right off the bat. And so we can get that information that we need about their budget, about what they're able to pay. Again, we're in the nonprofit world, right? It's not just, 10,000 more, no problem, So
wait, hold on. Right. I'm in the for-profit world and I can't do that. Just making it rain.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right. So, you maybe have to spend a little more time before you actually sign the paperwork, having those conversations, getting to know each other and forming that relationship. But I see that as a great thing because then the likelihood that we work together is a little bit higher. The likelihood that if we don't work together now, but we do so later is hopefully a little bit higher. And it's all about networking and forming relationships in the end, positive relationships. So the more I can do that, the better everybody is.
Totally.
Another thing we've been playing around with, which has been working pretty well, is if there's a client that we're really interested in working with that just doesn't have the budget for where we need it to be for a long-term relationship, we'll offer them we'll show them our regular, how we would normally price something and then offer them a discount for the first project or give them like a little like friends and family discount so we can kind of meet at a place that's comfortable for everyone, but then they also see what we would be charging without being nice to them. And so then that helps us just further down the road. If we're having additional projects with those clients, we can say like, you know what our rates are like. We did offer you this, but we need to.
In negotiation parlance, that would be explicitly labeling the concession.
Yes.
Yeah. And it gives you guys the opportunity to show them how good the work is that you do, so that when they come back to you with the next project, you're a known quantity and the risk isn't there, and so they're willing to actually pay that full rate.
Yeah. What is it about working for yourselves that you most enjoy? What is the thing about your business that's so far been really the most like engaging and pleasurable about the experience?
Megan, do you want to start?
Sure. I think for me, it's really like setting my own schedule, which is funny because I do work normal work hours anyway, even though I could like, not work from 2 to 4 if I felt like it and work in the evening.
Yeah.
It's the option, right?
Yeah, it's just the options there.
If you want.
And then maybe this is why people call me Bossy, but I really like being the final decision maker and saying like, this is my business. Katie and I agree on this thing and this is how we're going to do it. And we're just going to go and not waffling around on decisions either about, clients that we're working with or how we're marketing ourselves or kind of what we're doing as business owners. We can realize our own vision for ourselves, which is really, really fantastic and rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that you guys have an advantage in, which I did not when I started the business that I'm running now, is that you still have you each have a partner, right? You're co-founders. And so you still have the option in a negotiation to say, well, let me talk it over with my partner and we'll get back to
Right.
it. Which is something that like when you're working for somebody else, you can always say like, oh, I got to talk to my boss and find out. But like, if you're the final decision maker and they know it's you and just you, it becomes a lot harder to say that. It's like, oh, let me go talk to myself in the corner and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's definitely been one of my favorite things about starting this business is that I was able to find somebody who was willing to take this leap with me. And, it's one of the best things and it's one of the most challenging things because we do have to have incredibly candid conversations all the time. And you have to set your ego aside a little bit, which is kind of weird for someone who's starting a business because they really like themselves to say, right? It's been actually a really nice way to check that ego and make sure that you're like seeing the forest for the trees and just having the right perspective when you can bounce it off somebody. And that's something else that's been really great is that over the years, I've made all these friends who have started their own businesses. And I know all these wonderful women, specifically in PR and comms and marketing, who own their own shops and have been doing so for years and doing so quite successfully and not doing it maybe the traditional way that we see in the startup world these days, right? Like maybe it's just a different environment or a different form of client relationship, but it shows an alternative. And these have been mentors and role models for me that it really inspired me to actually get off my ass and do this. Sorry, can I do that? Can I say that?
We've already labeled this whole thing explicit. You're fine.
I will say this may be the first one in a long time that we haven't been the first ones to mention lean startup or to curse. So thank you guys.
It's a new one.
Yeah. So I think it's hard. Yeah, right. Every little bit counts, Kiki. So, it can be hard for people to start, especially women, to go into areas where there are not a lot of other women and where they don't have a lot of role models or people to lean on or people to talk to who understand their situation and what it might be like for you as an individual. And maybe that's true for everybody on some level, but, that has been really eye-opening for me to sit down and have those conversations with other women business owners and understand what they went through and what they dealt with, and they can give me advice. And I feel really, really lucky and happy for that. And also just kind of proud that I can join those ranks and, get up there myself and hopefully offer that for someone else one day. You want to pay it forward always.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found already, even we've been around for 5 months. Mm-hmm. People have been coming to me and asking like, how did you start your business? What are how do I deal with getting my LLC? Like, all these kind of basic questions, and to be able to help people with that stuff just so quickly after starting a business has been great. And just, hopefully there will be even more of that. So,
So what was one thing that you guys thought was going to be really difficult that ended up not being? And the inverse of that question, what was something you thought was going to be really easy that ended up taking forever or being really bad?
Something I thought was going to be really hard, not necessarily in this context, but whenever I thought about starting my own business, was landing my first client, actually. Yeah. And we were lucky enough to start this business because we had a client. So that was a very nice thing for us.
Yeah.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah. Right. And the way that happened was, I was doing some freelancing. I was thinking about my next moves and everything. And I ended up having a conversation with someone. Actually, shout out to Flashband, which is an awesome musician networking organization based here in DC. They're expanding to Baltimore, flashband.org. Props. But I reached out to the founder and just said, is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can help with? Is there any advice I can give? And he said, come talk to me. Let's have coffee. And one coffee turned into 3. that turned into all these conversations. And eventually he said, I would like to give you money. Not even that soon after, it was maybe 2 weeks. He goes, I want to give you money. How can we make this happen? And that is what really got me thinking, like, damn, it's time.
Yeah.
And I went straight to Megan and said, let's do this. So that was really nice just to get that little initial boost. Maybe that doesn't happen so easily for everybody, but that's just a lesson in being bold and going after what you want.
Well, I think I would imagine that it happens to the people who go and seek it in a way, right? I mean, I think that for each of us that are starting their own businesses or, working in, I mean, even just part of, companies where they have a modicum of real impact, you get those moments where the value of what you bring to the table is obvious to somebody such that they go, forget the sales pitch, forget the crap. Let's just do this. Like, clearly we're the right fit for you. You're the right fit for us. Let's just do this. That's a remarkable feeling. And it doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens, I think, to those, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, it happens to those who put themselves in the right position for it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a concept called luck surface area. And I'm forgetting who came up with this, but I really love it. And it's the idea that luck is a plane, or is a two-dimensional object, and where one axis is doing cool things and the other one is telling people about them. And so if all you do is tell people stuff, but you don't ever do anything cool, you don't have a very big luck surface area. And if all you do is do cool stuff, but don't tell anyone about it, you don't have a very big area. But if you balance those two, you have this large surface area of possible interactions where people hear about the cool stuff you're doing and then they want to do it.
Well, and I think a lot of times it's like the people who, back in my nerdy days of theater, I knew plenty of people who were like, well, the work that I do should speak for itself. Like, work is ethereal. It doesn't speak. If you don't go talk about it, nobody's going to give a crap.
Right.
And I think the same applies here.
Yeah, this is
work doesn't.
This is something. This concept of talking about it is something that I decided very early on that I would teach all my interns. Especially, I've had the majority female interns for most of my career, working at women's nonprofits, feminist organizations, that kind of thing. And it's always a speech I give everybody because I worked in social media for a long time, and reputation and branding is really important. And knowing about it and doing it and being active on it and thinking about, okay, as a young professional, where am I going to go? What should I talk about? What am I really interested in? What do I want people to know and see about me? No matter what field you're in, that matters now. So, but there's also a difference between talking about it and bragging about it.
Agreed.
Yes, exactly. It's all about having those really great conversations with people where you can share what you're doing without bragging about it. And that's when people start to like you.
Totally.
And want to keep having coffees with you.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you find that line between talking about something and bragging about it? Something
I personally try to practice is to listen first. I think it's key, basically to understand what you're walking into, right? Because there's a moment where you can brag and there's a moment where you can talk, and you have to know which of those people you have now encountered, I think. So, at networking events and things like that, I think that's a great excuse to say, this is what I do. What can you do for me? And that's not necessarily the interaction that I want to have with everybody. To truly form a relationship and form a friendship. Look, Teague, when you and I met, that could have easily been the kind of thing that happened. And what I liked about our interaction is that we immediately found a topic that was intellectually interesting for both of us. And we sat and talked about it for like 2 hours, I think.
I think that's about right.
And it was this.
Was it that little? It seems pretty short for Teague.
We were at a conference. It was a little.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It was just one of those hallways.
Yeah, we actually just sat outside the session and we're just doing our own thing in the hallway, which is, the best place to be at any conference, right?
Yeah.
In the hallway.
What I liked about it was that we weren't just talking about, this is what I do and this is what I like and this is whatever. We were listening to each other and engaging in a two-way conversation. And that became a friendship that has benefited, I think, both of us professionally, personally, et cetera. I mean, look at us now.
I don't know. He was shit talking you earlier. No, that's not true. I made that up. I'm sorry.
That's Jason's favorite thing.
It's true. Everybody talks about Teague behind his back. So Lauren, our close personal friend from NASA Space, Lauren asks, how do you measure your success? In other words, what does success look like to the two of you?
Well, Lauren, first, you just totally stole my question. I ask that question whenever I do any interviews or talk to any clients. It's a great one. Love it. And I'm going to let Katie answer.
Nice. Okay. Well, for me, I feel that we're successful when we're supporting ourselves, quite frankly. I'm pretty focused on financial success right now. I don't think that's a very strange concept for anybody to think about. But,
Yep.
part of having this partnership with Megan, this is something that we have talked about a lot, especially with me moving, is that, and we go on back and forth about this, but I asked her to start this business with me. Therefore, I am beholden to her. I want to make sure that this works and that this was a good decision for me and for her and for the people that we work with. So it's a lot of pressure, but it's an added sense of responsibility because we're friends. We care about each other. I care about what happens to her. And, she took this risk to me. So I will know I'm successful. It's an ongoing journey, but I'm going to know I'm successful when we both are in a good place and we feel like we're in a good place and we talk about it and we share it with others and we brag about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for clients on the client side, it's different for every client, right? Like there's no standard of success for each project you work on. But I think for me, it's delivering what the client asked for, obviously, but then also giving them something extra that they can either take on to future projects or helping them learn something from this beyond what they expected. So they see us as a resource beyond we're going to, do some social media for you. Sure. And so they feel like they got more than they asked for in a way that is actually beneficial to them.
Sure. So let me ask you a question, because this is a question I get a lot and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. What does it mean when you do social media?
Okay, well, we can tell you about a couple projects we're working on.
Wow, that sounds lovely. I'd love to hear more about those projects.
So right now we are actually wrapping up a project with the Phillips Black nonprofit law firm about juvenile justice and mandatory life without parole for juveniles. So they put together a report and hired us to create some infographics and social graphics. And then we ran Twitter and some LinkedIn ads for them to help push their report further. Yeah. So that's the oral arguments for that are going out to the Supreme Court tomorrow. So if anyone's interested in that, check it out.
Get your tickets now.
Get your tickets and check it out. So that's a very specific, contained, 3-week social ad campaign that we ran. For another client, we're doing a combination of ads and organic posts on 2 of their platforms to help them raise their brand awareness, engage with their solar panel, solar installer, called Grow Solar. And we're just helping them engage with their community a little bit more online and build some more brand recognition. Right now they do some social, but not a ton. And we're just helping them grow that, but mostly by writing it for them and running ads for them.
That works.
So, yeah.
For other clients, we've also done a lot of social media training, and that's going along with that philosophy that we want to leave you in a better place than when you started, right? So we did a huge focus for Flashband on staff training and empowering their staff to be able to manage their social, understand what it means. What is it like to run social for a business as opposed to your personal account? How can we use these tools to engage people online, offline, all that kind of stuff, and developing training materials that they can keep for the long term.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Yes. Also, my parents think that that my career is social, and that's all that I do. So, like, yeah, I do other stuff too, and they're like, "Oh, okay, Facebook."
Yeah, that's
great. Okay, that's fine. We can work with that.
Sure.
So we have another question from the chat. Space Lauren says, "What do you most about social media?" I think there's
love. I think it's love.
What do you love most about social media? Oh, cool. Little heart. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So what do you guys love most about social media?
The thing I love most about it is that I just landed our first client for us entirely through Facebook. So that made me really happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
So a major thing I'm working on is exactly that, since I'll be abroad and since, we have to continue to put on our hustle hat and get those new clients in, and I'm not going to be able to do that in person and have those meetings and go to those events. So I'm trying to figure out how to use social media in order to get us business, and it's working so far.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that in like the 5 years of running my business, I have not gotten any clients through social media.
Not great.
Huh. Well, Teague, you know what we can help you with.
But, wait a minute. Wait, I'm his damn co-host. He's going to ask me first. Guys, just horning into my business. Good Lord.
You have to be bold.
No, I got that.
Yep. So another thing about social that I think is great is just finding your audience or tribe or community or whatever you want to call it in a non-geographically limited space, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just like fundamentally what people think about, like maybe they don't actually actively think about that, but I think that's still one of the coolest things that you can do with social.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunate that like some platforms at Facebook are like totally pay to play. But I think there are some other platforms that are still really great, especially for small startups or budget limited orgs to find their people.
Yeah. I think the other thing that makes me happy about it, after working in the social space for so many years, and at most of the jobs that I've started, I'd have to come in and kind of define what my job is going to be, because they hire a social person or a digital, usually the title changes within the first couple months. And I have to kind of go through a training with everybody just to understand, okay, this is what I'm doing and what I'm offering you and what I'm bringing. But at the end of that experience, it's really satisfying to see that the organization has learned how to create authentic relationships. And you have to have this paradigm shift, at the very least in communications teams, that they have to put out good content, quality content, no matter if you're paying for it or not. If it sucks, nobody cares. And they have to form real relationships with other people and understand how valuable those relationships can be regardless of location. The fact that you can do it all online is really mind-blowing for people. But also, if I always use this analogy of sitting at a dinner table for social when I'm doing trainings and things like that. And if I'm hosting a dinner party and I'm sitting there with a megaphone and I'm just yelling about myself the entire time, that is a shitty dinner party. And you want to invite interesting people to your dinner party and have an interesting conversation.
So what you're saying is I've been doing dinner parties wrong for all these years.
You need some training with you.
Well, I think I'm going to need more than training.
Basically, like putting it in concepts that people can understand so that they really get that social is not intimidating. It's all about building relationships and having great conversations so that you build great relationships. That's it.
Yeah.
And then Periscope. No, just kidding.
Obviously. Periscoping the whole time.
Yeah.
So we've got 15 or 20 minutes left. If anybody has any questions or feedback or things they'd like to discuss, please continue to throw them in the chat. Okay. Teague, you look like you had a question. I feel like I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. We always try to talk at the same time. It's wonderful that we're working on the taking turns thing. So I was going to ask you guys, how did you come up with the good lemon?
Megan.
Okay, so this was actually something that happened to me. A name that came up in a project that I worked on many moons ago. That is a little bit cheesy, so I don't really ever tell the story.
Well, thank God we asked.
Should I tell it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
totally.
So here's what I did back when I was working for this super green organization. We were kind of hippy-dippy. We heard this tale of the good lemon that one of our interns found while she was chatting up people on a beach in India or something. Okay, so so the idea is that you take a lemon, you cut it in half down the middle, you take 2 jars, you put each half in a jar, and then whenever anything bad happens, you yell at the bad lemon and tell it how much it sucks and just channel your negative energy towards it. Whenever anything good happens, you celebrate with the good lemon. So we do this. We do it for we plan to do it for a month. We take pictures every day. After day 3, the bad lemon starts to get a little weird looking and the good lemon's still fine. And then as we progress, the bad lemon turns into this black, disgusting ball of mush and like horribleness. And at the end of the month, the good lemon is like pristine. Like it looks like you could eat it. It's totally fine. And we kept them like in the same space, same jar, like, same types of jars, whole 9 yards. The only thing that was different was like what the energy that we put towards it. So yeah, that is. So after that, I was like, oh, well, I know one day I'm going to start my own business and I don't know what kind of business it's going to be, but I'll figure that part out. But I know I'm going to name it The Good Lemon. So that was when I knew it was destiny. When Katie's like, will you start this business with me? And I'm like, yeah, I have a name. It's called The Good Lemon. And she was like, oh, that's perfect. Let's do it. It was the easiest decision we made with our business.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that. I love when company names come from a really honest, like fun place. Particularly something like that where it's, a lot of companies, it's Swahili for this, and it really means something like with no connection emotionally to anything related to it. And yours is a great, I think it's a great little parable, if you'll forgive the word, but a great little parable about the energy that we put out there and what can, and the fact that you guys embody that in your name, I think is really cool. I like that a lot.
It's been nice. People seem to like it, but my favorite part is when we go to a business meeting and someone will order a glass of water, iced tea, and there's a lemon on it, and they go, oh.
Yeah.
So it's got that nice little.
We're like, yep.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So we got our good friend and close buddy here, Mr. Wonderful, asking, do you try to target more female-related markets? So I guess as women entrepreneurs, do you find yourselves targeting, specifically other women in business because you feel that they have a connection that you can't find otherwise?
Well, I won't speak for Megan, but not necessarily so like, yo, you're a woman. Let's do, but since I
feel like that is the worst pickup line ever. Hey, you're a woman. Let's do this. I would get in a lot of trouble for that.
I have a professional background in the more feminist space or working on, kind of women's issues, if you will. So that is something that obviously it's my network. I'm tapping into it. I'm going to be, hopefully getting those clients and working on those contracts just by nature of my experience. And that's actually a nice thing too, because I don't think that the whole, that lean startup principles have necessarily got into that space. And it's going to be interesting to see how it changes and see how people receive those ideas. And hopefully it's a positive one, but I'm really interested in taking it in that direction. The other interesting thing is we've attended a few meetings or networking events with other women business owners. And it's just by nature of, hanging out together. There's plenty of small businesses owned and operated and run by women in the area. And there's not as many people approaching them saying, do you need something directly? So even if we just show up to those events and, say what we do, that we're a marketing firm, enough people run up to us by the end of the night that we're just drowning in business cards, which is nice. So I'm sure it's going to happen. But I'm not specifically targeting women business owners necessarily. It's just the nature of how we're making connections so far, or at least how I am.
Yeah. I will say I do like when we're looking for subcontractors, I like to obviously hire the best person for the job, but make sure that we are at least seeing a 50-50 split on the applicants we get, and then decide from there. And so just, we have more power than just the clients that we work for. It's also the people that we hire and the people that we bring into our network. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, it sounds to me despite the fact that you guys have a relatively young business, that you are in good shape, and it sounds to me like you've got Well, it sounds to me like you've got a lot of really good stuff going on. Since this is perfect. Since you recently started your company, is there one piece of advice that you would pass on to anyone who's thinking about starting their own venture, and any either piece of advice you'd offer or any pitfalls you'd avoid?
I guess my most basic first piece of advice is something that everyone talks about doing but doesn't do enough of, and it's just talk to everyone that you know. I have gotten the most benefit out of just being very open with people that I'm close, that I have met or have worked with or that I'm close to, and just saying like, look, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. What do you think about that? And not necessarily letting people dictate to me what I should do. But again, just listening and being receptive and picking out the things that I need, but not necessarily taking everything, right? So you do also have to believe in yourself on some level. And I think when you go into those conversations, you have to be very assertive from the beginning. I am starting this business, not I'm thinking about maybe, I don't know, this is happening. What do you have to say to me about that? Right. And then how can we work together and how can we do those things? Because something that I've experienced after starting this business is that people tend to hear me wrong when I say, people go, oh, what do you do? And I say, hey, I started a company. And they go, oh, you joined a company. That's great. And I say, no. And you have to reiterate the fact that, no, really, I'm the boss here. I am doing this and you need to approach me on that level. And otherwise, then there's not a lot that we can say. Good luck to you.
Yeah. On that note, I've had a lot. I've told people I was starting this business, and then I started talk to them a little bit about the like LLC process or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, you actually have a business?" And I'm like, "Yes, I actually have a business. This is what I'm telling you." So I told you from the beginning, I actually have a business. So to that point, I would say, don't let the operations, LLC filing, legal mumbo jumbo scare you. If you want to start a business, if you have an idea, if you talk to everyone you know about it and they are all behind you and you want to take the plunge, like that stuff is A, easier than you think, and B, totally, you probably have friends that are accountants. Like Katie and I are like, all friends who are accountants, please give us an hour to 2 hours of your time so we can figure out how to like manage our books. Right.
And they're doing it, which is the best part.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a little handy.
So I love that it's the, oh, you have an LLC, you actually have a business is the thing that gets people to say like, oh, you actually have a business, not the like, hey, we have clients already. People are paying money.
Right.
Like that's business, even if you don't have the LLC.
Right. No, it's the like, I have legal paperwork that says I'm a business owner.
I am real. I swear to God.
Yeah, and that's something that you and I talked about recently is the imposter syndrome and feeling like I'm supposed to be here. This is what I should be doing. I'm in this room. I'm in charge of this business. It can be really difficult to own that all the time. And there are a lot of emotions involved in this and it's going to be up and down. So being able to talk about it, being able to be okay with being a little bit vulnerable, but also being bold is really important because this isn't easy. No one waltzes into this. I don't care who you are. It's very emotional. It's very risky, but it's also something that can be very exciting and rewarding and fulfilling, even if it doesn't work right away.
Totally. I love that. I think, one of the things I would say, and I imagine that my esteemed co-host here would agree, is that there's something really remarkable about two people who find each other to start a business together, who have a similar vision, who have a similar sense of ethic, who also have a similar sense of, desire of goal. I mean, it sounds to me, without having been on the inside conversation, it doesn't sound like you're necessarily looking to like generate $500,000 in sales next year, or you're trying to, build to a point, you're building a product you're going to sell. Like you're building a life for yourselves and you're building not just a job, but a business. And it's really, I think, really impressive when two people find each other like that to say, like, let's be business buddies. Like, let's do this together and really jump in and make this happen. I mean, I think it's cool. Teague, do you dare disagree with me?
I dare you.
There you go. Smart man. Very cool. Well, so we have a few more minutes before we're done. Teague, did you have any questions or any additional thoughts before I poll the audience once more?
So you guys were just talking about getting free advice from accountants. So I figure, while you're here, we're going to get some free advice from you. What should we do for StartupJab to promote this talk show and
yeah.
more people.
So something I wasn't immediately aware of was, do you guys have a Twitter account?
We do have it.
The problem is, so this is good, because one of the things that Teague and I have been trying to figure out is that this is, we're iterating on this with each and every episode. I mean, this really does change every time. And we've been doing this from our own personal accounts because Teague has his business and I have mine. And we've been placeholding it, not knowing quite what to do with it yet. So I don't know, maybe it's time for us to start using it.
That would be my first piece of advice. Yeah, I was actually trying to tag you guys, and I wasn't immediately sure. I was trying to do it real quick, like we're about to get on this, and I wasn't immediately sure what was your account and what that kind of brand awareness and recognition. So if you don't use it, I won't know about it, and then no one will. So
yeah,
let's do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is we both have pretty strong followings on our personal accounts and no following on the StartupJab account. So we've been using sort of the StartupJab hashtag, but not really using the account,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest, I don't know, the thing that I always tell clients with social media, that it's never going to work if you're not going to use it. And there are all kinds of excuses for why not to use it. But until you make that jump and just get on there and start talking, no one's going to really know that you have something to say. So,
nobody has ever met me and not realized within the first microsecond how much I have. Ego, the other hand, is kind of quiet guy.
Yeah, I think the other thing, the reason that I know you were doing this is because I was trolling Facebook groups and saw you talking about it in those groups. And again, I would tap into the power of those networks, but also get outside of inviting your friends at one point. Twitter is really useful for that. So, jumping on those hashtags a little bit, finding where those other conversations are, those other tweet chats are, and inviting people back, maybe finding some guest hosts who you don't know personally, maybe just expanding it a little bit and getting those people to invite your friends, all those kinds of obvious things, but doing it frequently and soon.
Damn it, we're going to have to work.
Yeah. Usually the advice comes with work.
That's how it goes, right? It's the if someone asks you for advice, you say, "Sure, I'll give you some advice," and then they realize that the advice is, "Oh, you have to do a lot more work," and then you say, "Yeah, and you can hire us to do that work for you." Right?
Yeah,
that's how it makes 70% of my sales.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Well, I would say, unless there are other questions in the audience, it seems to me it's been a little quiet in chat. People are wrapping up. Cool. Megan, Katie, it has been a tremendous pleasure to have you guys on the show. We really do appreciate it. What is the best way for people to reach out to you, both individually and collectively, if they want to follow up with you?
Sure. So I'm operating from our Twitter account at The Good Lemon. That's always a great way to reach us. We are thegoodlemon.com. You can reach us all the time. We have several ways. We're building our Instagram following right now. So if you want to jump on and join us there, that's super fun. That will get even more interesting in 2 weeks when I'm documenting my daily journey in French.
Maybe we'll have an internal battle to see if DC or Brussels wins. Most likely to
if you want to email us directly, it's hello@thegoodlemon.com.
Love it. Perfect.
Yeah. Excellent.
Very cool. Teague, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Teague Hopkins or at teaguehopkins.com.
Very cool. I put in the chat as well the links to thegoodlemon.com if you'd like to follow up with our esteemed guests directly. You can also check out StartupJab.com for our mailing list, our podcast, other super awesome, incredible stuff like our bios written with only the 1,000 most popular words, which I still think is really cool, and nice job, Teague. You can find me at Jason Nellis. You can find me at my company's site, overachievermedia.com as well. Teague, anything you want to close out with and say before we play our outro music? Because we have that now.
Ooh.
I think we're going to go to the outro
All
music. Right. And I think it's time for the dance
All right.
party.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.